2 days after the scandalous encounter at the company's gates, life had seemingly returned to normal, but Rita felt a heaviness in her chest she couldn't shake. There was a gnawing sense of unease following her everywhere, from her office to her car, even at the cafe across the street where she usually grabbed her late-day coffee. That day, as she left work slightly later than usual, she had the nagging feeling again. She stopped at a bookstore, pretended to browse through a shelf of novels, and turned quickly, only to catch a flash of someone ducking behind a pillar outside. Her instincts went on high alert. This had gone on for too long. She reached out to her personal driver, Charles, and asked him to take a different route back home. They made several confusing turns through traffic, but the same car, unfamiliar and tinted, kept trailing them a few lengths back. Enough was enough. Rita made a few calls, and by the following morning, her private investigator had gathered the truth. She couldn't believe her ears. James, the investigator said, handing over a file. He was released 2 days ago. On bail. But how? The charges were serious, she muttered, flipping through the documents. That's where it gets interesting, the man leaned forward. Someone powerful posted his bail. Someone who's had a long-standing grudge against your family. Look at the name. Rita's heart dropped as her eyes landed on the signature. Maxwell Granger. Her blood ran cold. Maxwell Granger was a formidable rival, one of the biggest enemies to her father's business empire. Ruthless, vindictive, and obsessed with toppling everything her family built. Why would Maxwell bail out James, she asked, eyes narrowing. To use him, clearly. He wants to break your spirit. James is the perfect tool, he knows your past, your weaknesses, and how to trigger you. Rita clenched her jaw. So this wasn't over. She paced her living room later that night, mind racing. James had always been bitter, but now he was a pawn in something far more sinister. Maxwell didn't just want revenge, he wanted to humiliate her, destroy her from the inside out. Rita looked out the window at the dark, quiet street. If they want war, she whispered, then war is what they'll get. Her phone buzzed just then, a text from an unknown number. It's not over, Rita. You started this. I'll finish it. James. She exhaled deeply, deleting the message. Let them come. She wasn't the same girl who once cried in silence. Now, she was ready. Rita sat across from her brother Harry in his private lounge, a glass of untouched juice in her hand, her face clouded with concern. The events of the last few days had weighed heavily on her, James being bailed out, the stalking, the defamation. But what had shaken her most was the realization that all of it was no coincidence. Someone was orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. He's out, Harry, she said softly, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. James is walking free. And guess who bailed him out? Harry, lounging in his seat with a stern expression, looked up sharply. Don't tell me it was Maxwell Granger. Rita nodded grimly. And there's more. The investigator found out that Maxwell has been meeting frequently with someone close to Lynette. It's not just revenge. This is strategic. Calculated. Harry leaned forward, his brow furrowed as he connected the dots. So Lynette, she isn't just some bitter woman with a vendetta. She's working with them, feeding them information. No wonder they knew about the board meeting, the restaurant, even your routine. She's the inside snake, Rita muttered. And she's been playing this game longer than we thought. Harry rose to his feet, pacing the room. His expression turned sharp with focus, the kind of look he only wore when he was about to make a serious move. This means we're close. Too close. He turned to look at Rita. The enemies already made their mistake, getting personal. Bailing out James was emotional, not tactical. They're slipping. You think we're getting near the heart of it? Absolutely. Harry's voice was firm. Lynette's connections, James's sudden appearance, Maxwell's involvement, they all lead to the same nest. We expose this alliance, we take them all down in one blow. Rita stood, her strength returning. Then let's burn the whole nest down. They messed with the wrong family. Harry's phone buzzed. A message from one of his informants flashed on screen. Target spotted. Lynette having lunch with Maxwell's chief strategist. Sending pictures. Harry smirked. Game on. The photos arrived moments later, grainy, but clear enough to identify the two figures seated in a high-end restaurant at the edge of the city. Lynette, dressed impeccably as always, sat across from a tall man in a navy blue suit, Derek Vaughan, Maxwell Granger's most trusted right hand. The strategist. The puppeteer behind most of Maxwell's moves. Harry turned the phone to show Rita. There it is. Proof of the alliance. Lynette's in bed with Maxwell's empire. Rita's hands clenched, and here we were thinking she was just bitter and petty. She's playing a long game, Harry. Harry nodded. Yeah, but she's sloppy now. They're getting desperate. They thought you'd crumble the moment James showed up, but you didn't. They thought the company would turn against you, but your leadership only gained more respect. That move at the general meeting. It bought you loyalty. Rita took a deep breath, nodding slowly. Then let's turn that loyalty into a weapon. Later that evening, Harry gathered a small group of trusted staff in his home office, people loyal to Rita, employees who had seen the strange events around the company and stayed firm. Among them was Rita's friend Mercy from accounting, Lewis from internal security, and Clinton from PR. We're dealing with an internal mole and a powerful external enemy, Harry began, standing before the group. We now know Lynette is connected to Maxwell Granger's strategist. That's not just office gossip, it's a full-blown infiltration. Gasps rippled through the room. What do we do? Mercy asked. They're dangerous people. If Lynette's feeding them our strategies, then we feed them poison, Rita cut in. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with resolve. We give them fake strategies, plans that look credible but will lead them into a trap. And while they chase shadows, we dig deeper. I want every digital footprint Lynette leaves tracked. Every meeting. Every message. Lewis nodded. Leave that to me. I've already begun backtracking her calls and her company logins. She's been accessing files beyond her clearance. Perfect, Harry said. And Clinton, I want you to prepare a controlled press release. If this alliance ever tries to publicly discredit Rita again, we'll have our story ready to expose the real players. Clinton smiled. It'll be airtight. Meanwhile, somewhere in the city, Lynette reclined in a velvet armchair, sipping wine as she listened to Derek Vaughan speak. They're starting to sniff us out, he said, annoyed. The CEO's son is moving faster than we anticipated. Lynette smirked. Let them. We're already 10 steps ahead. Once Rita's reputation is tainted beyond repair, the board will lose faith in her. She'll be forced to resign. And that company will crumble under the scandal. Derek leaned forward. Are you sure James can keep his mouth shut? He's too blinded by vengeance to ruin anything. Besides, I've got my eyes on him. He dances to whatever tune I play. They clinked glasses. But what neither of them knew was that the hunter had become the hunted. Back in Rita's apartment, Rita stood by the window, phone in hand, watching the moonlight spill over the city. Harry had just left, and the room was silent. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, nice try today, Rita. But you've started a war you can't win. She stared at the message, unmoved. Then she typed back. Good. I never wanted peace. She blocked the number, turned off her phone, and whispered to herself, let's see who burns first. The sun had risen higher than usual by the time Rita stirred from her sleep. Her body felt heavier than normal, her mind clouded from the endless plotting and emotional warfare she'd endured lately. Still, she forced herself out of bed, wrapping herself in a robe and stepping into her slippers. Downstairs, the house was unusually quiet, Harry already gone to work, and the help likely in the kitchen. Rita yawned and began descending the stairs, one hand clutching the mahogany railing. Halfway down, her foot slipped. Crack. Her scream tore through the silence like a knife. Aha! Her body tumbled violently, hitting step after step, her arms flailing, her head bouncing off the wooden edge. Her robe tangled around her legs, her cry becoming weaker with each roll until she landed in a crumpled heap at the foot of the staircase. Miss Rita, the maid shrieked from the hallway, dropping the tray she was carrying. The sound of shattering porcelain echoed, but no one cared. The butler rushed from the dining area, heart racing. "Call an ambulance. Now." The maid dropped to her knees beside Rita, her hands trembling as she touched her arm. "Miss Rita, can you hear me? Oh, my God, there's blood, her head's bleeding." Rita's lips moved slightly, her eyes fluttering. She tried to speak, but only a faint groan escaped. Within minutes, the sound of a siren grew closer. Harry arrived just in time to see the paramedics lifting Rita onto the stretcher, an oxygen mask on her face, her long hair matted with blood. "Rita," he yelled, forcing his way to her side. "Sir, you need to let us do our job," one of the paramedics said gently. "What happened? What happened to her?" "She fell down the stairs, head injury, possible broken ribs. We need to move quickly." Harry climbed into the ambulance without a second thought, gripping her hand as the doors closed behind them. Inside the speeding vehicle, the beeping of machines filled the space. Rita's pulse was faint but steady. Tears burned in Harry's eyes as he whispered, "Stay with me, Rita. You're strong. You've survived worse than this. Please don't leave me now." The ambulance rushed toward the city's best hospital, red lights flashing, the world outside a blur. At the hospital entrance, a team of doctors and nurses waited. As they wheeled her in, Harry stood frozen, helpless, as the woman who had become the heart of everything he fought for disappeared behind the emergency room doors. He clenched his fists, whispering through gritted teeth, "Whoever is behind all this, you've gone too far. And I swear on everything, I'm coming for you." Harry paced the hospital hallway like a lion in a cage, his nerves frayed, hands balled into tight fists at his sides. The sterile white walls felt like they were closing in on him. Every second without an update felt like an eternity. When a nurse finally stepped out, he nearly ran to her. "How is she?" he asked, voice hoarse. "She's stable for now," the nurse replied softly. "No internal bleeding, but she has a concussion and a fractured rib. She's resting." Harry released a heavy breath of relief, but his eyes were still stormy. "Thank you. Can I see her?" "Soon," she assured. "But, Mr. Harry, there's something else." Harry's brow furrowed. "What is it?" "While cleaning the scene back at the house, your staff found something unusual," she continued, handing him a sealed evidence bag that had just arrived from security. Inside was a small cloth, drenched in a slippery substance. "What is this?" he asked sharply. "Oil," she said grimly. "Spilled on the staircase. It was no accident." Harry stared at the cloth, rage creeping up his spine like fire. He knew the stairs in that house, always pristine. The staff were meticulous, and Rita herself was careful to a fault. So someone tried to hurt her. The nurse nodded solemnly. "Security footage from the house is being reviewed as we speak." Just then, his phone rang. It was the head of his home security team. "Sir, we've confirmed it," the man said gravely. "Someone deliberately spilled oil on the stairs. Our cameras caught movement early in the morning, a figure in a hoodie sneaking down the hallway with a small bottle. We're enhancing the footage, but from the frame we caught, it looks like Lynette." Harry's grip on the phone tightened. His jaw clenched. That woman has crossed every line. He hung up, turning back toward the hospital room where Rita lay. The soft beeping of her heart monitor echoed through the corridor as he approached. He took one last look at the oil-soaked cloth in his hand, then turned to his head of security, who had just arrived at the hospital entrance. "Call the police," he ordered coldly. "We're pressing charges. Attempted murder." And just like that, the war had taken a deadly turn. Harry sat at the edge of his seat, elbows on his knees, hands buried in his hair. The hospital's waiting area had never felt so suffocating. His heart hadn't stopped pounding since Rita's fall. His mind was a whirlwind of questions, fears, and images of her lying unconscious at the foot of the stairs. Their mother, elegant and composed on any other day, was now a shadow of herself. She stood by the window, trembling, holding onto the curtain for balance. Her face was pale, eyes red from crying. "She's pregnant," she kept whispering to herself, over and over. "And someone tried to kill her. My God." Harry stood up abruptly, pacing back and forth. He had never felt so powerless. This wasn't just about Rita anymore, there was an innocent life inside her, a life just beginning. The thought of losing them both twisted his gut painfully. Their father arrived moments later, breathless, his usually firm expression shaken. "Where's the doctor?" he demanded. "Why hasn't anyone said anything? What's going on?" Harry approached his father, trying to steady himself. "They're doing everything they can." "But Dad, it was no accident. Someone spilled oil on the stairs. Intentionally." The elder man's face turned red with fury. Who? Who would dare?" "We have suspects," Harry said tightly. "Lynette. Possibly James. We're turning over the footage to the police. I'll personally see to it they pay for this." Just then, the doctor came out, removing his gloves, his face serious. Everyone rushed to him. "Doctor," their mother asked, barely above a whisper. "My daughter, my grandchild. Are they okay?" The doctor gave a slow nod. "She's stable. We managed to stop the internal bleeding in time. There was some distress to the baby due to the fall, but we've administered medication to support the pregnancy." Gasps of relief filled the hallway. Their mother sank into a chair, tears streaming down her cheeks. "So, the baby is okay?" Harry asked, his voice cracking. "As of now, yes," the doctor confirmed. "But we'll need to monitor her very closely. She needs complete bed rest, no stress, and constant care." Harry nodded quickly. "She'll have everything she needs." "Thank you, doctor." "Truly." As the doctor left, Harry turned to the rest of the family. "This is war now," he said grimly. "They've crossed the line. They tried to kill my sister and her unborn child. I swear, they'll regret it." Their mother held her rosary tightly, praying under her breath, as Harry walked to the glass window that looked into Rita's room. She lay there, pale and unconscious, her hand resting protectively over her belly. He placed a hand against the glass. "Hang in there, sis. I won't let anything happen to you." Anthony was in the middle of a crucial meeting with potential investors, 3 international partners who had flown in that morning, eyes sharp and pens ready to sign off a deal that had taken weeks to prepare. Seated at the head of the conference table, Anthony was calm and composed, flipping through the proposal with confidence, responding to every inquiry with poise. Just then, his assistant, Nina, burst into the room, breathless and visibly pale. Everyone turned to her in surprise. "Sir. I'm sorry to interrupt but..." Anthony looked up, a slight crease forming between his brows. "What is it, Nina?" She hesitated, then said in a low, urgent voice, "It's Rita. She's been rushed to the hospital." Time froze. The pen in Anthony's hand slipped and clattered to the table. His eyes widened. "What?" "She fell down the stairs, sir. She's in critical condition. The family's already there." Anthony didn't wait to hear more. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he said sharply, standing up so fast his chair fell backwards. One of the investors blinked. "Mr. Anthony. Is everything all right?" He straightened his suit jacket, already striding toward the door. "A personal emergency. My sincerest apologies, we will reschedule." "But..." "My apologies," he repeated firmly without breaking stride, and was gone. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Anthony's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. His heart slammed against his chest. Images of Rita's smile, her laugh, her gentle hands on her belly, they all swirled in his mind like a storm. The idea of her hurt, of anything happening to her or the baby, was unbearable. He burst into the hospital's emergency wing, chest heaving. The receptionist looked up, startled. "Rita. Rita Malua. Where is she?" "Sir, please calm down." "I am not calming down. Tell me where she is," he barked, eyes wild. At that moment, Harry appeared in the corridor. Anthony rushed to him. "Harry. Where is she? What happened?" Harry looked worn, eyes bloodshot and filled with anger. "She fell. Someone spilled oil on the stairs. She's stable for now, but it was close." Anthony's breath caught. He looked past Harry toward the observation room where Rita lay, pale and motionless, and 4 drip hanging beside her bed. He stepped closer, gripping the window frame. "She doesn't deserve this," he whispered, voice trembling. "She's suffered enough." Harry nodded silently. "I'll stay," Anthony said. "I'll take care of her. Just let me be here." Harry looked at him, surprised by the raw emotion in his voice. Then he gave a tight nod. Anthony pressed his forehead against the glass. His chest rose and fell rapidly. "Hold on, Rita. Please, just hold on." As the hours passed, the sterile, white walls of the hospital room felt like a cage to Anthony. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, his mind racing with a mix of worry and frustration. The doctor's words still echoed in his ears. "Her baby is unstable. We need to keep her here for a few days under observation. It's vital we ensure both she and the baby are stable before releasing her." Anthony couldn't focus on anything other than that one sentence. Unstable. The word sent shivers down his spine. Every second she wasn't out of danger felt like a lifetime. He couldn't bear the thought of losing her, or worse, their child. He had refused to leave her side. Even when the nurses urged him to rest, even when they told him that he needed food to be able to function, Anthony remained resolute. "I won't leave her," he said each time, his voice unwavering despite his exhaustion. "She needs me now more than ever." The doctors had taken all the necessary precautions. Rita was stable for the moment, but they couldn't afford to be too careless. Anthony watched her, his gaze never leaving her face, even when his eyelids grew heavy and his body begged for rest. He had brought a chair next to her bed and settled there, leaning forward, elbows resting on his knees, eyes trained on her. The soft beeping of the machines surrounding her was the only sound that filled the silence. Anthony's mind raced with thoughts of how things had spiraled, of the lies, the betrayal, the danger she had been in, and now, her falling and the peril to their baby. She had only just begun to trust him again, and now this. He blamed himself. He felt like he had failed her. Rita's hand lay limp beside her, her skin pale, her breathing steady but shallow. Every now and then, Anthony reached out and gently grasped her hand, his thumb brushing the back of it in a silent show of support. The nurses had brought in a blanket for him after he declined to leave her side. But it didn't matter. Every time he closed his eyes, he could still hear the sounds of the hospital, the clicking of machines, the whispers of nurses passing by. His thoughts were a mess, a storm of fear and guilt. He couldn't think of anything other than the fear of losing her, of losing them both. Hours turned into days, and Anthony didn't leave the hospital once. He refused to go home, refused to eat, and only caught a few hours of sleep in the chair beside her bed. He was utterly exhausted, but nothing mattered more than making sure she woke up and saw him by her side. When the morning sun filtered in through the window, casting a soft glow on the room, Anthony sat up straighter in his chair, rubbing his eyes. He hadn't even realized how long it had been since he had properly slept. His body ached, his muscles sore from the unrelenting hours spent perched at her side. He hadn't told her how he felt. Not fully. Not the way he needed to. But he wasn't going to wait any longer. He didn't care how tired he was, or how many people told him to take a break. He wasn't leaving until she was out of danger. The door creaked open, and Harry stepped inside, his footsteps quiet as he looked over at his best friend. Anthony didn't notice him immediately, still too focused on Rita's sleeping form. "How's she doing?" Harry asked softly, his voice filled with concern. Anthony gave a slow, tired nod, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's stable, but we can't relax yet. Not until the baby's okay." Harry didn't say anything for a moment, watching his friend. He could see how deeply this was affecting Anthony. The man had spent years guarding his emotions, but now, standing in front of Rita, it was clear, he cared more for her than anything else in the world. "You're gonna be all right," Harry said, his voice reassuring. "She's strong. So are you." Anthony gave a faint smile but didn't respond. His attention remained entirely on Rita. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Rita began to stir. Her eyelids fluttered, and she let out a soft groan. Anthony was instantly alert, his hand tightening around hers. "Rita," he whispered, his voice rough from the lack of sleep. Her eyes slowly opened, and she blinked a few times, as though struggling to adjust to the dim light of the room. Her gaze landed on him, and she blinked again, as if she couldn't believe he was there. "Ah, Anthony." Her voice was weak, but it made Anthony's heart leap in his chest. "I'm here," he whispered, his thumb gently brushing her hand. "I'm not going anywhere." Rita managed a faint, weary smile, her fingers tightening around his. "You haven't left." Anthony bent closer to her, his voice filled with sincerity. "You don't have to thank me, Rita. I love you. And I'm not going anywhere. Not ever." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time, they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, and of something deeper. For the first time in days, Anthony finally allowed himself to exhale.